Welcome to Built to Finish. I'm your host, Stephen Pivnik. Join me each week as we explore the journeys of audacious goal setters. This includes experienced founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs sharing pivotal moments that propel their success. We'll also be talking with endurance athletes who push the limits of physical and mental ability. This show is brought to you by Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Built to Finish. I am very excited to introduce today's guest. He is the business growth strategist providing strategic assessment, custom solution design, and hands-on implementation to empower CEOs of middle market companies to achieve exceptional growth. He is an M&A advisor whose expert advice has given him a proven track record of helping navigate critical business challenges and reach impressive results. He is the partner and chief sales officer at Chief Outsiders and founder and chief executive officer of Accelerate Consulting. Bill Bell, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Stephen. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's really great to speak with you, and I'm sure you're going to share some phenomenal advice and experiences that you've had in the entrepreneurial world.
Sure. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I always like to start out with the end first. From an advisory perspective, you've been involved in a lot of exits, both to strategic acquirers as well as financial private equity type firms. In your experience, what have been some of the key strategies that founders or entrepreneurs have put into place in order to maximize the results for everybody involved?
Well, I mean, when founders are looking to sell their business, typically what we see, at least from the private equity side, is, they're looking to, make the company as attractive as they can to the PE space.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they do a lot of things like, build their pipeline, make the pipeline look very attractive. They try and close as much business as they possibly can right before they go into the sale process. What we've seen recently, let's say in the past 24 months, is that, because interest rates are so high, the volume has been quite low. And so, most companies are not looking to sell right now because, the cash flow is pretty low and the pipeline are pretty soft. So, we're seeing a low volume of transactions right now. So normally, like I said, they're looking for the best time to sell, and quite frankly, right now is not the best time to sell.
Okay. So from a private equity perspective, do you see, there's a lot of, things that need to fall into place in order for a company to get a maximum valuation. From a private equity advisory perspective, do you see tricks that some companies, pull that are just incredibly obvious that you would advise against?
Yeah, I mean, the big trick always is, trying to transfer orders from previous years into this year.
Okay.
So holding back their orders that they got from last year and moving them into this year. Also taking a lot of orders that are in their pipeline that aren't actually orders, but they get letters of intent that are not clear purchase orders, but letters of intent. And
Mm-hmm.
when you go through the due diligence, you're like, okay, I see a letter of intent. Where's the purchase order? Oh, well, we don't have a purchase order yet. Well, okay, then, you really can't recognize that as an incoming booking. Do you have a date of when you have to deliver this? Well, that hasn't been negotiated yet. So you see a lot of that. That's normally the big one, is really trying to manipulate their pipeline and their recognized bookings, which really aren't bookings.
Yeah, so I guess the advice would be, don't do anything that's just not natural that you normally wouldn't do in your regular course of business, because
Correct.
a smart investor or smart acquirer is definitely going to see through that, and it's going to be hard, if not impossible, to fool them.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, I mean, private equity, we're going to dig pretty deep, and trying to pull the wool over our eyes is pretty difficult to do.
Yep. I totally agree. You're definitely going to go deeper than a strategic. Not that a strategic won't go deep, but a private equity investor or acquirer is going to go significantly deeper.
Correct.
What are some of the like top two or three things that have occurred, during due diligence that have caused deals to fall apart? I'm sure the list is real longer than two or
Yeah, the
three.
list is really long. I had a situation where we looked at a company and discovered that the owner had transferred some stock to a different family member, but had not recognized that stock transfer. And so that was a big no-no that we recognized during the due diligence.
Hmm.
Also recognized one where the building was owned by a shell company that actually was his shell company that he didn't tell us. It's kind of funny because you're like, you go into a transaction and we're going to do the due diligence. You don't
Right.
think we're going to find this out. It's kind of funny that people think that that we're not going to figure this kind of stuff out. I mean, we're here. It's going to be a transaction. We're going to eventually see it. It's not like we're not going to see it. So, yeah,
I mean, I don't think there's any quicker way to lose credibility from a potential investor or acquirer than to like not disclose some of that stuff, which is like easily going to be discovered.
right, yeah. So, but they try it. They all try it. So,
I'm sure you've seen that and a whole bunch more. So so the due diligence process is, super stressful, obviously, for the seller for sure. And for the acquirer, it's another transaction, probably an important transaction, but right? They wouldn't be in it if it wasn't important to them. How do you advise founders on like the stress that they're going through and the inevitable setbacks that are going to occur? How do you keep them focused to keep their eye on the ball and to keep the result in mind?
well, I mean, the thing that I always advise to, let's say, a founder when we're going through the due diligence is, hey, listen, if you've been honest and you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about. We're not looking to find anything about you that you should worry about. If you've been honest up front, um, you shouldn't have to worry. If we find something that you know is is something, let's say, that you didn't realize was a problem, but you weren't hiding it from us, that's fine. We'll come up with a solution, But if you're hiding something from us, that's a completely different story. But if there's issues in the due diligence that you brought it out to us and you were honest with us, then we can figure out a solution to it. But if you're trying to hide something, that's a completely different story. So I always just say, hey, just be as upfront and honest with us as you can, and we'll work it out.
Yep, I totally understand. Honesty is definitely the best policy in this case, and anything hidden, 99.9% chance it's going to be found.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you're not hiding it on purpose. Like for instance, when I was going through my sales process, there was an old contract, like it was probably 8 years old that promised somebody something, which A was completely immaterial, B I completely forgot about, but it reared its ugly head in the 11th hour, and it didn't derail the deal, but it caused a lot of unnecessary drama while we were super, super, super close to the finish line.
Yeah, a lot of times it is immaterial, so, don't stress over it.
So speaking about stress, so obviously, founders are stressing over the valuation and they want to get, the best deal possible. If they've gone through the necessary investment banking process and they with a proper investment banking firm, there's multiple bidders for the company, and the price continues to get raised. From a buyer's perspective, since you advise private equity firms, what is your thought process and how do you look at, some of these, quote unquote auctions that are happening that are continuously raising the price for what you're trying to acquire?
Well, I mean, always when I talk to someone and they say they want to sell their company, the first thing I say, first key advice I say is the most important thing that you can do is get yourself a good investment banker. Do not try and do this by yourself or try and do it alone. That's the worst mistake you can make. Get a good investment banker, make sure you're comfortable with them, make sure that they've got good experience and they've done this before. They understand your market. That will guarantee you that you'll get the optimum price that you're looking for. That's number one. Number two, I can tell you that if you want to get the highest price, your best bet is to try and sell it to a strategic. A strategic is always going to give you a higher price than a private equity firm. So first, in my opinion, you should try and sell it to a strategic if you can. If no strategic wants it, or you can't find a strategic that has interest in your business, then your second best bet is to go to private equity. However, um, you need to do your due diligence with the private equity firms. There's really good private equity firms, and I'll be honest with you, there's really bad private equity firms. You need to make sure that you understand what the values are of that private equity firm, what their interest is in your company. Are they looking to just buy and flip? Or are they looking to add value to your company? What's your end goal? Do you want to stay with the company or do you want to divest completely? You really need to think about all those things before you actually put the company on up for sale. And I think if you really think that through and have a clear understanding of what the end goal is, um, you'll always get the best value for the company as long as you know exactly what the end goal is. But if you just get an investment banker, put it up for sale, and try and auction it off, um, I think, in my opinion, it's not in your best interest.
Sure. And that often, comes through, right? So, when depending on your approach to the actual sale, I mean, people will see through it, and whether if you're looking if it's a fire sale and you're just literally looking to dump it, versus you're really passionate about the business and its long-term capabilities, you're going to approach it from a completely different mindset, and that's going to be um, very, very obvious to the buyers. So you mentioned transition and like thinking about whether or not you want to transition and work with the investor. From an investor perspective, what are you looking for in the actual seller, the owner of the company, and the management team that he or she has to determine who stays, who goes, and then like A, what are you looking for? B, when is that determination made? Is it, pre-close, post-close, combination of both?
For me, I always say, it's kind of like a marriage. You have to have a lot of the conversations before you walk down the aisle. So, before you get married to someone, you need to have a conversation. Do you want to have kids? When do you want to have kids? How many kids do you want to have? Kind of the same conversation you want to have with the owner before you buy the company. The question is, do you want to stay in the company? I know you have a management team. Are you satisfied with this management team? Or, are there some weak spots in the management team? I don't think that you can learn through due diligence how good the quality of the management team is. You have a rough idea. You can see the history of, what kind of growth pattern you've had with the company over the past 5 years, but you can't really tell specifically which individuals in the management team are good and which are not. But I think the owner you want to have discussions with, are there holes in this management team? Do you want to replace individuals in this management team? What has been your thought process? now that you're going to have more capital in this business, what would you do with the company? So I think you want to have a lot of those heart to heart discussions with the owner before, if you're going to buy the company, before you put money down. Let's really understand where we're going to go. Once I give you my money, what are you going to do with it? And what's the plan moving forward, with the management team and you as an owner? How you're going to move forward.
Yeah, so speaking of moving forward with the owner, there's somebody who I follow a lot and respect, and his comment about these types of transactions is, if you're the owner of a firm that's selling to a private equity firm, you will be fired in 1 year's time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Period. Full stop. I don't necessarily agree with that.
I completely disagree with that. I completely
Okay,
disagree with that.
thank you. So I'm sure it all depends, right?
It all depends. I mean, we my private equity firm, we've had, uh, you know, I would say almost every company that we've bought, we've stuck with the owner, the founder, unless they've said, "Hey, listen, I want to sell my business to you. I want to stay here 3 years and then I'm done." But I've worked in private equity for quite a while. Um, like I said, there's good private equity firms and there's bad private equity firms. The good
Sure.
ones, the good ones, they look at a company and say, okay, this founder, he built this company from X to Y. Can he get us from Y to Z? Um, yes or no? And have a conversation with him and say, we think that you can get us to a certain point, but we don't think you can get us to the next point. Do you agree? Yes or no? Um, but no, I don't think most private equity firms are going to fire the CEO 1 year into it. It it's doesn't make sense for most thesis to just buy a company and whack the CEO and put somebody else in his place.
I mean, I agree. Unless of course it's a roll up, right? If it's a roll up and you're not the platform company and you're a bolt on acquisition, then obviously there's no room for two CEOs. So I'm assuming there's all different types of scenarios as to whether or not a role is found for the founder.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if I have a platform company and I do a bolt on to that platform company, normally if I'm going to buy a bolt on, I will talk to the bolt on company and say, we're going to bolt you onto this platform company. We've already got a CEO there, and you're this platform company is $100 million company, and I'm going to bolt you on, and you're a $10 million company. You do understand that you don't have the skill set to run $100 million company. You understand, right? And the answer is going to be yes. I do understand that. Now, you probably have a technical expertise in this particular product or market that we need. So we're going to find a role for you in this organization. It's not going to be the CEO, but it might be some technical expertise of this product or market. And we're going to need to, understand what that fit is. It could be a vice president of marketing, or it could be a technical expert or a product line manager for this particular product, but it's not going to be the CEO position. And he might say, no, I just want to sell my company and move on. Okay, fine. But again, that's the discussion you have with him before you walk down the aisle.
Sure.
You don't buy the company and have him think he's going to be the CEO, because that's not fair. That and
Sure.
and most rational, honest business people don't want to do that. That's just aggravation.
Have you had scenarios where the CEO of a bolt on company actually became the CEO of the new entity?
I can't think of a scenario where that's happened, but at least not in my career. But
Sure. I'm assuming with the just with the amount of transactions out there and all these foundation companies and bolt-ons, it probably has occurred and
it
under
has
certain
occurred. Yeah, I'm sure
yeah.
it has. Yeah. So
Obviously, one of the benefits of selling to a private equity firm, if you choose to take advantage of it, is to, roll some equity forward and to get the proverbial second bite of the apple, as they call it. How realistic is that? And is that something that entrepreneurs should really consider seriously versus, taking all the chips off the table at the time of the transaction?
Well, my private equity firm, we always want the founder or the owner to keep invested into the company. So we like to have him at least a third of of what he got to leave on the table. Because in most cases, we want him to continue to run the company. And yes, um, you know, if we do our job right, we're probably going to roll this company within 5 years.
Mhm.
And if we do our job right, we're probably going to get 3 or 4 times a multiple on that. So if he reinvests, he's going to get 4 times, 3 or 4 times on that uh, 30% that he left in the business. So he is going to get a good second bite at the apple. So we prefer that.
So there really is a great opportunity for that second bite of the apple or the second payment that the founder receives to actually be greater than the initial one.
Yeah, oh, most definitely. If at least in a private equity firm, I think a lot of private equity firms are now seeing the value of this. Um, so if I had my own company and I was selling to private equity, I would most definitely want to stay, reinvest some of my investment, and get a second bite at the apple. Because you know, regardless of what some people say, private equity firms, they know what they're doing. They understand how to grow these businesses, and they're smart people. They know what they're doing, and you can, if you get the right private equity firm, they'll understand how to grow your business, and they've got the capital to do so. And so it's wise to, you can get a much better return than you can putting it in the stock market and getting 8 or 10% year over year versus, 5%, 3 or 4 times multiple on your money. Just my opinion. So
So to your point of these private equity firms know what they're doing, most private equity firms, have a playbook that they like to, install or implement in their acquired company. And then the companies have been doing certain things for a very, very long time. And if you ask them, why do you do this? The answer is, well, it's always been done this way. How contentious does it become, post transaction when the private equity firm says, well, we insist that whether it be a sales process, a manufacturing process, a marketing process, what have you, when they insist that the company, change their ways to do it via the playbook versus how it's always been done.
we don't do that. We don't come in and say we insist you do it our way. What we do is we come in and we say, what are the or three things that you believe we need to do to really grow this business exponentially? And you've not had the capital to do it. What are the 2 or 3 things that we need to do? And we brainstorm, you know, we're probably going to come up with 50 things, but we really want the 2 or 3 key things that are going to happen or that we think can happen. And then the next question is, do we have the right people in this organization that can do that? And then the third thing is, do we have enough capital to execute on that? And once we get all of that put together, then we help him put together the strategy to actually execute it. And then as he's executing, we have an actual execution team of support staff where we've got operational people that have done this, 50 times over and commercial people that have done it 50 times over. We don't come in and tell them what to do. We meet regularly and say, what roadblocks are you running into? Well, I'm running into ERP issues. We need help with ERP issues. Okay. We've got ERP specialists in our organization on the commercial team. We'll come in and help you with that. Um, so we don't have a playbook that we direct to them. Our playbook is mainly the three steps that I talked about. Understanding what are the issues that are going to make a or the points that are going to drive the business. Do we have the right people and do we have the right capital? That's the point for us.
So switching gears a little bit to your other day job, you provide a lot of sales consulting and advisory work. Can you just share the details of exactly what you offer and to what type of companies?
Yep. So I do what I call growth strategy consulting, and it's for middle market companies. And when I say middle market companies, it's my ideal client profile is companies that range in revenue size of, I'd say, on the small side from 50 million in revenue, and on the upper side 500 million in revenue. Um, and I mean, my sweet spot obviously is in industrial companies, so industrial automation, robotics. But I can do any B2B company that is middle market company. Now, when I say growth strategy consulting, it's a multitude of different things. First would be strategy consulting. So, looking at things like market segmentation strategies, go to market strategies, value proposition, messaging, brand strategies, um, value proposition, ideal client profile, that type of stuff. Then I also do a lot of work in um, sales and business development strategies. So helping them figure out how to put together a standardized sales process, sales compensation strategies, pipeline management systems, sales enablement tools, sales playbooks, anything that's sales optimization or marketing optimization. I do that as well. So it's anything that can help your company grow from the commercial side, top line development is basically what I do.
Awesome. And what do your engagements look like? What's the duration of a typical engagement that you work with a company?
It depends. Normally, my engagements start with with an assessment. So it's normally a 2-month assessment, and I come in and I basically help them try and understand what is the problem that's slowing them down. Normally the company engages with me when they see that they have come to a stall, that that they're seeing no growth.
Hmm.
And so then I come in and I do normally a 2-month assessment and try and figure out what's the problem here. Why aren't you growing your business? From that assessment, I then will say, okay, here's the 4 or 5 things that I think are slowing you down, and then put together an engagement plan. And normally that engagement, I look at either the salespeople, the sales process, the platform, or the performance metrics are kind of the four main areas that I look at. I will also look at, do they have the right go to market strategy? Have they looked at um, a market segmentation strategy? Based on all of that, I'll put together an engagement plan. And the engagement plan normally is between 6 and 8 months. Um, and normally with the client, I'll put together for them. This is what I think um, where we are today, and where I think at the end of the engagement where you'll be. And we kind of put together some metrics of, you know, at the end of the engagement where we think, what the end result will be.
Hmm.
So,
Great. How often do you encounter sacred cows, right? You walk into a company and they've had, sales leadership or other staff that have been there for a very long time, and the founder is just incredibly loyal to these individuals, and you can easily pinpoint that they are one of maybe a myriad of reasons for sales growth. How often do you need to have those conversations?
Probably 80% of the time.
Right.
No, I would say, one of the biggest, most common, we'll say, problems that I see in a stalled growth is a owner or a smaller company, let's say, 50 million, $60 million company. So a smaller mid-market company, owners like to take their Rainmaker salesperson and promote them to the sales manager.
A very, very common mistake.
Very common mistake, a very big mistake, because A, being the Rainmaker is a completely different skill set than being a sales manager. And number two, if they're the Rainmaker, the worst thing you can do is take them off the road and put them in a management position, because then they're not making rain.
Right.
So you've doubled the problem. You've taken them off the road, so their sales end, and then you put them in a position where they don't have the skill set to do the job. Um, but the Rainmaker thinks this is a great thing because they've been promoted, they've been
Sure.
recognized for their contributions to the organization, but then they get frustrated almost immediately because they're being asked to do a job that they're not good at. And then all of a sudden they go from being the hero to the goat, or to the problem.
Yeah, the other goat, not the greatest of all
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, not the
The
greatest of
the
all
the
time.
bad
The other
goat.
guy, the bad goat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Billy goat, whatever you want to call him. So I run into that so often. It's incredible.
What do you say to the founder or the CEO that says, "Well, I've got this Rainmaker, and him and I or she and I are very confident in their ability to create additional because they're a Rainmaker and they know what it takes. They're very confident in creating a team of Rainmakers and kind of duplicating or multiplying themselves."
I hear that almost every single time as well. And I've got all kind of data and statistics and analytics that show you that that doesn't happen. They're not good at teaching other people how to do what they do, because um, they do it purely from off the top of their head.
It's natural to them. It's just totally it's
It's
natural.
natural, and they don't have a process. It's just natural to them. And if you were to sit down with a Rainmaker and said, "Show me your process of how you go about selling," they will say, I don't have a process. I just do it. And it's like, well, no, I want to see the steps of the process. I don't have that. I just do it. So how are you going to teach that to somebody else? Just tell them, just do it? No, it doesn't work. Can't, you know? I mean, that's why, like, if you take Michael Jordan, he's the greatest of all time. He's not a coach,
Correct.
because it's just a natural talent that you can't teach.
Yep, totally agreed. Now the other goats, so the goats in sports have a really hard time recreating themselves in others. So, last question. The third job, which I know takes a minority of your time, is co-leading with me a group at the CEO project. Maybe we can you go back and forth and just talk about the benefits of joining a CEO peer group and how beneficial that is to founders and CEOs of organizations of all sizes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's extremely beneficial, because at least when I was a CEO running my company, and my company was owned by a private equity firm. So the disadvantage for me running a portco of a private equity firm was, when I went to the board meeting, they didn't want me to come with a set of problems and ask for a solution from them. They hated that. They
Mhm.
wanted me to come to the board meeting. I've identified a set of problems, and I've identified the solutions to those problems, and I'm now executing the solutions to those problems, right? Same thing, I think, with a lot of the members of the or the CEO project is if you can come to a board meeting and you've already identified the problem and you've already identified the solution, and you've already identified the execution of the solution, you're light years ahead of everybody. What we do at the CEO project is we come together with a group of other members that act as an advisory board, and you can bring your problems to them and brainstorm and figure out the solutions to your problems and figure out executionable solutions to your problems. And you're light years ahead of every other CEO. And I mean, it's so worth it. I think I've told you, I was a member of the CEO project when I was a CEO, and I saw such value in it that when I retired, I immediately came to Jim, the owner, and said, I'd love to be an advisor because there was so much value that I saw. What I'd like to be able to give that value to other people because it made such a huge difference in my career. So yeah, I think it's something that's such a great tool to have that people, if they understood the tool, they would be like, jumping across the fence to get into a group.
Yeah, I mean, I agree more. Not to sound self-serving, but I was exactly in the same boat. I was a member as a CEO of my own company for 8 years. And when I sold it, Jim and I spoke and we agreed. And he asked me to come back as an advisor this time because he remembers me telling him that when I was a member, I enjoyed giving other people advice about their issues and their challenges more than I enjoyed receiving advice from the other members. Because, being a hot-headed CEO founder, I thought I knew everything, but I still brought challenges to the group, and they proved to me that I don't know everything, and I received some really, really, different perspectives to solutions on the problems that I was bringing to the table, and it was, like you said, a super valuable experience that, I stayed a member for, just over 8 years because of, how much value I received from the CEO project. So for everybody listening, Bill and I can't speak highly enough about the CEO project, and we'll add a little bit more detail in the show notes about this. Bill, you're a wealth of knowledge on growth strategies, sales strategies, dealing with private equity firms. Where can people reach you if they have any follow-up questions for you?
Well, I think you'll probably in the show notes have my email address and my cell phone number.
Okay.
Call me anytime. Glad to help. Answer any questions you might have. Even if it's not a consulting engagement, if you just have questions, I'm obsessed with business. My wife keeps asking me when I'm going to actually officially retire, and I said I only have 2 hobbies in life: golf and business. So I doubt that I'm ever going to quit golfing, and I doubt that I'll ever actually formally retire. So if you're not golfing with me, you can ask me any business question you'd like. And if I don't have the answer, that's fine.
Thank you for offering that up. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners will appreciate it and probably to take you up on it. And I could attest, Bill answers his emails and he answers he answers the phone, and he'll do the same for you. Bill, thank you so much for being on the show. As I predicted, this was a great episode filled with a lot of great information and great advice. Thank you so much.
Yep. Glad to be here. Enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching another episode of Built to Finish. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do like and subscribe. It helps the show a lot. And if you found the information shared here today useful to somebody else in your network, please do share this episode with them. Thank you very much for tuning in today. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Accresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.